Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, flying solo. The Warriors, they beat the Boston Celtics 123-107, and they are the first team, the Warriors are, in the Western Conference who have beaten the Celtics, who have been arguably the best team in the NBA all season long. They just smacked the Phoenix Suns a couple nights ago. And, after the Jazz loss, there was a lot of angst and a lot of concern. And it's all reasonable because the Warriors have been so up and down. You don't want to overreact to one game. That Jazz game was just a tough, bitter pill to swallow. And we've talked about how the Warriors' schedule coming up is really, really rough. And it was going to be very, very telling. It's just getting started, right? They hit the road for some tough games. But the question, for me was like, what Warriors team are we going to see? And also, I expected them to rise up to the challenge, right? Like this stretch of games is going to be very telling, not just for the win-loss records, but what you actually see from the team, how they actually compete, how they rise up to particular challenges, especially now that they're going through the roughest part of the season so far. There's going to be rougher ones, but this is definitely just the toughest. The Celtics, the Bucks on the road, the Sixers on the road, the Nets on the road, et cetera, et cetera. And this was so damn satisfying to watch. You know what I mean? The Celtics came in and everybody expected the Warriors to get blown out. I didn't necessarily think that they would get blown out, but it was always going to be on the table because the Warriors have been so up and down, and they had dropped a couple stinkers. They dropped one against the Pacers last weekend at home when they just didn't really show up. And then they coughed up the game against the Jazz. But Steph and Draymond, they hadn't played since that Pacers game, and they had played 3 games in 4 nights. So having that extra rest and really focusing, and then also they all went to the Sports Illustrated Athlete of the Year awards ceremony, which Steph got. So maybe that was kind of fun for them. But bottom line is like this was the Warriors' best performance of the season. And hopefully, I mean, you never know. It might trigger them. And it might remind everybody like how they need to play, who they are, and all that kind of stuff, because this was obviously the team they faced in the finals, and they all across the board stepped up their games. The intensity was there, and obviously it felt like a playoff game. And there's so many dudes who stepped up, and I think that in terms of where they go from here, I think that they can feed off of this, and they need to string a few more of these games together. This game could be a turning point. We'll see. They get the Bucks, I believe, on Tuesday. But some great performances. First off, Klay Thompson, 36 minutes, 14 for 26, 4 for 11 from 3, 5 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 34 points, plus 9. Klay was amazing. He simply was. He wasn't hunting his shot, but he was aggressive. He was taking his shots in the first quarter even. And, like once he started hitting them, you could tell like this was, game 6 Klay. He was getting into that mode. They needed that effort from him, especially without Andrew Wiggins, and especially with Jordan Poole not having the greatest game overall, not the greatest shooting game. Poole was only 5 for 16 from the floor, 1 for 9, although he hit 9 out of 10 free throws, which was big, and he had 20 points. But, Klay rising up to the moment and honestly just being in the flow of the offense and then playing good defense. Those are the things that you want to see. And it's good that he can meet the moment still. Ever since that Phoenix Suns game, that second one, where Klay was hunting his shot and the Warriors just looked overmatched, he's been looking good. Yes, he's had some down games. Yes, he had some really, really bad gaffes against the Jazz, but he more than made up for it in this game with the way he played and his defense on Jayson Tatum and on Jaylen Brown. I mean, Brown got his still, but Klay was just, this is what you want to see, honestly, plain and simple. And then Steph, 37 minutes, 12 for 21, 6 for 11 from three, 2 for 2 from the line. God, that guy should get to the line so much more. I swear. If he got his fair share of calls, I mean, at the very, very least, that's like 4 to 6 more free throws a game, right? And he would be averaging like 35 points a game or something. But he also had 6 boards, 7 assists, plus 20 on the night, and 32 points. So Steph, I mean, every time the Warriors needed a big shot, Steph got it, because the Warriors, they built up that big lead up to like 16 points in the second half. And then, there's some questionable calls, the refs making it a little bit close for ABC primetime. And then Steph would come down, he would hit a 3, he would hit a 2. And that is huge. Like, he's your tone setter, right? Like, when things are feeling a little, like uncertain, you're feeling a little nervous, that's what someone like Steph can do. You're very confident in his ability to get an open shot and just nail it. Like, that's the security blanket that Steph can bring in a game like this when it's so intense and everybody else is rising up. Steph takes that, to another level. Kevon Looney, I always say this season, like, he is so much better on his layups, on his shots. Like, it was always like the past couple seasons, like you pick and roll him, or like he cuts to the basket, you give him the ball, he will kind of stumble and then smoke the layup or something. But he has been really, really good since basically like the second half of last season up until now. And he was very solid, 3 for 4, 15 boards, which is huge against the Celtics, plus 19, 7 points. And then Donte DiVincenzo, I've talked about, and this kind of shows, I've talked about how big of a deal it was that he was injured with that bum hamstring in the early part of the season, largely because he was going to be so important in settling that second unit down. The second unit that caused so many problems early on, as that veteran presence, as that guy could take pressure off of Poole. And, also because he needed those reps with this new team to get comfortable with just playing with these guys, get that chemistry going, for the vets to trust him, for him to know where he's supposed to be, to know like guys' tendencies, to know when they're going to cut, when they're going to go backdoor, all that stuff. And DiVincenzo, 17 minutes, only 1 for 3 from the field. He had hit 1 3-pointer. He was 1 for 2, 8 boards. I've talked about how he's a really, really underrated rebounder, very surprising, and he knows to dive to the basket. It's almost like Steph is a really good rebounder because he looks for the rebounds, and he, as a guard, can see where the ball is coming from, and he gets himself in the right spot, and he's really, really smart too. People get on Klay for not having that many rebounds, but the thing is, when the shot goes up, Klay is often on the perimeter, and he's often taken off on the break, or getting ready to take off on the break. So he's not necessarily always underneath the basket. It's not like Klay's always in the best position throughout his career to crash the boards. That's more of like Steph is kind of there. So it's almost like DiVincenzo does a lot of that stuff. He had 8 boards, 3 assists, 3 points only, but he was plus 20. And yes, the plus minus stat is an imperfect stat, but plus 20, tied with Steph for best plus minus on the night. And just overall, the eye test combined with that plus 20 tells you that Donte DiVincenzo is getting better and better every game. I've been saying that for the past month or so, month and a half, and I think he'll be critical. And even though he's not Gary Payton II in terms of pure athleticism, the effort's there. He's on ball. He is getting up on guys, point of attack. And I talked about point of attack recently, and there's a couple guys who are picking up the pace. It seems like that's something that's being emphasized, and DiVincenzo is one of them. And of course, also Jonathan Kuminga, who I love talking about. I've talked about him. I talked about him in the last episode a lot. And again, he just showed you what he's able to do. That loss against the Jazz we all kind of lament that as like a wasted game and whatnot. And yes, they should have won that, but just all these little games where Kuminga shows how good he can be and how he himself, gets those reps, and how he shows Kerr and the coaches and his teammates how much they can trust him, how much he's grown, helps in games like that. Like that Jazz game helped in this game because there were a couple mistakes he made, but Kerr trusted him and the team trusted him. Kuminga played 21 minutes, 6 for 9 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3, 5 boards, 3 assists, 14 points. And he, as I said, is another one of those point of attack defensive dudes. All the way to his first real minutes last season, we would see him able to stay with guys who were athletic in his size, and then also smaller dudes who were supposedly quicker than him. But as last season went on, he started getting called for more fouls, and that's natural. That's part of the process, especially as a young rookie. And now he is stepping up to that challenge even more of being a point of attack defensive stopper type. I mean, his lateral quickness is pretty good. If you watch him out there, he's pretty quick, and he can recover. Like in football, like a defensive back, the hip swivel, like the quick hip turn and catching up to your guy. And he bugs Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown had a good game, like I said, but Tatum very much so, like especially in the first half, you could see Kuminga rising up to the challenge of guarding these two dudes. And it's like, I love it because I've talked about Kuminga's confidence and his cockiness, and he always seems to enjoy those matchups against dudes who are like him, similar to him, guys who are either at his level or guys who are where he wants to be. And you look at Jaylen Brown, you look at Jayson Tatum, and they're in the same category of like these tall, super athletic wings. And obviously Kuminga isn't there yet, but on the defensive end, the effort is impressive. And without Andrew Wiggins, he did, and it wasn't just Jonathan Kuminga, of course, but like he did a very, very, very good job of bugging Tatum and helped Tatum have a bad night. And then that dunk on Tatum's head, I mean, that was a thing of beauty, to be honest. Kuminga got him in the post, one-on-one. Tatum stripped it, and it looked like it was going to go out of bounds. On the replays, you could see it landed right in bounds inside of the baseline. Kuminga grabbed it and just went straight up. And I said in the last episode, and I've said several times over the last couple of years, Jonathan Kuminga is one of the quickest jumpers I've ever seen. Like he just gets to the rim so quickly, not just because he's 6'7", 6'8", but because he's so dang explosive, right? A lot of dudes can get up there. Even Klay Thompson can get up there, but no one gets up there as quick as Kuminga on this Warriors team. And he just threw it down on Jayson Tatum. And, you love to see that. That was an eye opener for me, and I'm sure for the rest of the league. And that's it. Like Kuminga is part of this rotation, and even his mistakes, some of his early mistakes in this game, I mean, they were all in the vein of trying to make the right play, trying to do the right thing. So, like that's the trust that he's earned with Kerr. Like you're doing the right thing, you're trying to make the right play, and you mess up, but you just keep it going. So I will take that any day. This was a good game. Again, like it was so much fun to watch, and it's good to know. I mean, it feels right. Like it feels like the Warriors still are in the Celtics' heads, and I don't know. I mean, after all, my Warriors fandom of every other team being in the Warriors' heads growing up, and it's nice to see the Warriors kind of flex and everything. And it's just one game, and I'll admit I haven't watched the Celtics play outside of a couple windows or highlights and whatnot. But Jayson Tatum is a very, very good player. And I said this before the finals last year, and I said it during the finals and when the Warriors beat them in the finals. As good as Jayson Tatum is, as talented as he is, he still hasn't proven to me that he is that guy. Like, he could not make anything against the Warriors, and he smoked so many layups, especially in the second half. And I saw somebody tweet, some journalist, sports NBA journalist, I think from Denver, tweet about like, oh, you could feel this being like one of those Tatum games where he's just starting to get hot. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? I just didn't feel like he was. I didn't feel it from him at all. And you could see like they were focusing on him, and he just wasn't hitting anything. He looked hesitant. He looked like he did in the NBA Finals, where he was not effective, and that definitely messed with his head and messed with his game. And the fact that Wiggins wasn't there and that you could throw Kuminga on him, Tatum can be bothered, plain and simple. The Warriors maybe are a bad matchup, maybe it's psychological, but whatever he does against other teams, like, he has not been able to do consistently against Golden State. He played 40 minutes, only 6 for 21, 2 for 9 from 3, and 7 boards, minus 13, 18 points. That's not what the Celtics need in a game like this. And from my perspective as a Warriors fan, you love to see it. So I will 100% take that. And, he doesn't seem to have that killer instinct, that ability to just take over, as much as the media wants to say it, as much as Celtics fans want to say it. He doesn't seem to have that extra gear so far where it's like, oh, I'm taking over this game and I'm going to do it. Jaylen Brown seems to have it more. Maybe that's because Jaylen Brown seems more unfazed and more steady. And, but that's just my opinion, like, that's just what I've seen so far. Maybe Jayson Tatum looks lights out in every other game except against the Warriors. But right now, to me, that's the only one that matters. That's the only one that matters because that's this game. And that's the team that beat him in the finals, that just shut him down. Tatum, when I see him play against the Warriors, he still seems like, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but he just seems like a kid. He seems like a kid who can't get past like the older, I don't want to say brother, but like, the older guys on the pickup court, like, he can show out against other teams, other players. But like, once these guys show up, the old heads show up on the court, he kind of falters, he kind of crumbles, I just don't see it so far. I just don't see it. And again, Jayson Tatum is probably like 24, 25 years old. So he has years ahead of him. But just right now, it's like, this should serve for the Celtics as like a check yourselves moment, right? Like, they need to understand that they are playing really well. They got that same NBA Finals bump that the Phoenix Suns had last season. It's actually like exactly like the Phoenix Suns. They lost in the finals. They're young, and then they're feeling themselves, and they're doing really well in the regular season. But can they bring it when it really matters? And this should remind them that, they haven't proven anything yet. And they've shown that they can improve during a season just like they did last year. But, and maybe they will. But right now, this was a really, really important game. People were telling me that they expected the Warriors to get blown out by 40. And hey, there's evidence so far this season that it could have happened. But we know that the Warriors can be this good, right? We know that there's flaws. We know that the sharpening of the tools needs to happen. And it's these kinds of games where those tools get sharpened. That's where Donte DiVincenzo steps up in the bright lights. That's where Kuminga continues to improve. That's where Klay Thompson shows up, and he shows the primetime national ABC world that he is back, that he is who he can be. You know what I mean? So, again, there will be up and downs, and there will be some very, very tough matchups, but this is a positive. They get Milwaukee on Tuesday, which is great because, I mean, that's Sunday and Monday where the Warriors can travel and rest. They get the back-to-back against the Pacers, so you might see some rest on that one. And then they get Philly on Friday, and then a couple days, the Raptors Sunday the 18th. Then Tuesday the 20th, they get the Knicks, and then a back-to-back at Brooklyn, so you might get some rest then. And then a few days before they get the Memphis Grizzlies on Christmas Day. So this was a great way to start off this stretch against some really, really good teams, a lot of playoff teams, a lot of contenders in theory in that crowd. This is what they needed to launch themselves, right? They need this in their recent memory to be like, yo, we could do this. This is who we are. This is who we can be. Let's go to this. We know the kind of effort that we need to bring against the quote unquote best team in the league record wise right now. So now the Warriors are number 10 in the play-in. They were number 11 before the games tonight. And we'll see. We'll see. This is a positive and we'll take it. And this is a reminder, no matter how bad it gets on the road, that the Warriors can still access this. So if they have a bad run, yes, it'll be telling. And no, it's not going to be just, oh, it's all good. But let's not panic yet. You know what I mean? Let's kind of see how it goes and see where they can bring it. They didn't have Andrew Wiggins in this one. I'm not exactly sure when he's coming back. Hopefully it's soon. Imagine this game with Wiggins out there. Imagine Wiggins and Kuminga against Tatum and Brown defensively. And then you throw Steph, Klay, Poole offensively out there. And then imagine that against other teams. All I'm saying is don't want to overreact, but bottom line is this is a good reminder to all of us and hopefully to the Warriors themselves where they can get to. And it shows growth because that's what you're looking for in this season. You're not like, okay, we're the best team in the league right now. Who cares? It's really about all right, the vets, they can still get there. The young guys and the new guys like Kuminga and Donte DiVincenzo, they are slowly but surely working their way up. They got several months, to get to where they need to be. And that's all that matters for this Warriors team. You know what I mean? So I'll leave it at that. Great win. So much fun to watch. I might have to watch that one again. I'll definitely be catching highlights and going on Twitter and watching some replays of stuff. But that was a whole lot of fun. But the reality is the Warriors are still just one game over 500. So there's a long way to go. But that there's some definite signs of real life, not just little life, but real Warriors life that we've been looking for a long time this season. So anyway, that is another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Patrick E. Pino or at Oakland Warriors. Check out our YouTube channel where you can watch this episode, youtube.com/Oakland Warriors. Check us out at oaklandwarriors.com and be sure to tell your fellow Warrior fan friends to tune in and listen. The Oakland Warriors podcast is produced by National Film Society and is a part of the Basketball Podcast Network. And if you're so inclined, please do leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to leave us a nice review saying good stuff about the show on Apple Podcasts, that would be hugely, hugely appreciated and it would be very, very helpful. Thanks. That's it. Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time.